What happens when your worldview crumbles and things no longer make sense? In 2016, that happened to me. I was once an evangelical pastor, Bible teacher, Sunday school teacher, deacon and elder in my churches. I had followed after this dream of the American Christian nation. And that all came crumbling down in 2016. Worldviews crumble when you face it face to face with the reality of the inconsistencies of our thought processes. I chased many a worldview over the years, and I would inevitably get to the point to where it was a logical inconsistency, and I couldn't take that anymore. See, our worldview gets ingrained into our brains from a very early age. That's why we can't be sure of anything, really. We have to take everything into context. And people aren't very good at that. So this little video is a presupposition number 1. I cannot know what I do not know. We'll be looking at how our worldview gets developed and how we can change that worldview once it again is ingrained into our minds. I'll welcome you in on this journey. Before we discuss how a worldview crumbles or falls apart, we have to determine how a worldview is formed in the first place. So what happens when we are born? We're born with a set of DNA, and we're also born into a life situation. We'll call that our culture. So the beginnings of our worldview development is through those two things, our nature and our nurture. And so in that environment, we begin to have outside stimuli coming in that we begin to have emotional responses to, develop love ties. And so the first time we go to the grocery store as a toddler, our parents teach us how to operate in that environment. We learn not to steal. We're not told really why not to steal, but we're just told not to steal. And that becomes a value to us. And then those values become our worldview. So it looks kind of like that, right in the middle. So we have our culture feeding into that worldview. We have our DNA, so our presuppositions that we have as far as we might be predisposed to alcoholism or predisposed to a certain personality, certain educational capabilities, or our IQ is all developed, all part of our DNA for the most part. And so we have, our family pouring into us, mom, dad, grandparents, aunts and uncles, all teaching us these different things. And so we have stories that come into our lives, and that goes into our worldview. We have different events, like a tornado comes into our life, and that has an emotional effect on us, and it does something to our worldview. And then our worldview can be influenced by actual truth, though objective truth is a myth. And I'll show, let me stop there and explain that. I say that objective truth is a myth. It may not necessarily be a myth, but it's unattainable. We all know subjectively. And so if we know subjectively, we cannot know objective truth. That's not possible. So even if there is objective truth, we can't know it. So therefore, it's irrelevant whether it's objective or not. So we have to get our truth somehow. So how we get it is through all these different influences on our lives: the teachers, uh, uh, parents, pastors, Sunday school teachers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, all pouring into us, into our worldviews and our belief systems. And our worldview is shaped by our interpretation of these events going on, but also we can have misinterpretation of these events. So not only do we have the different aspects pulling it coming into us, or our learning, our history and mathematics and spelling and things like that all go into our belief system and our worldview, but also fiction comes into our worldview. Some people will just lie to us. And over here are facts. Problem is, if we have facts and misinterpret those facts, we're still off base. So nobody has a perfect worldview. So that's our starting point. Starting point is I cannot know what I do not know. And I cannot know what I know, what I think I know is wrong without being open to the possibility that I'm wrong. There are three perspectives in any situation: there's yours and mine, and that of an unbiased third party observer. So, whenever we're in any situation where we're having to this conflict of worldviews, is we have to understand that my worldview cannot be perfect. It's impossible for that worldview to be perfect. As the story I heard, John Calvin said, the best theologian is only 70% right. And the question is why would you kill people if you know that you're 30% wrong? Any worldview or ideology that does not start with humility needs to be done away with. Love you.